Welcome to today's episode of Marketing Innovators Podcast. Today we have a very exciting guest, Carlee Groves, who leads marketing and communications for CopperTree Analytics and is responsible and accountable for all aspects of marketing communications for CopperTree Analytics global operations. Her role includes defining and executing marketing, digital, communication, and PR strategies to support the overall corporate goals and objectives. She supports the productization of CopperTree's SaaS software solution across various vertical markets through numerous acquisition channels while analyzing their results and opportunities for improvement. Her passion includes optimizing the customer journey and lifecycle from brand awareness to final purchase and customer advocacy through thought-out demand generation to increase recurring revenue. Carlee is also pursuing her Master's of Business Administration through Royal Roads University, and in her spare time, she is a full-time mom and wannabe golfer. Carlee, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me here today.
Excellent. So Carlee, what does CopperTree Analytics do?
Great question. So CopperTree Analytics, our primary product is our software Kaizen. And Kaizen is a comprehensive AI building analytics solution that consists of an energy information system and fault detection and diagnostics platform. And so what does that mean? That basically means that our software talks to building automation systems in all types of buildings, and we help our customers run or build their buildings as energy efficiently as possible.
Wow. So what got you passionate about marketing communications, and how did you end up in this role?
Well, it kind of goes back a little bit to when I started at BCIT doing a marketing and sales diploma. That's when I really started to realize my passion for marketing. I think the biggest thing for me is understanding buyer behavior. That's one thing that, regardless of what position or job that I've had in the past, understanding how our customers think and how they buy and how they make buying decisions is something that, I'm really passionate about, because it's always evolving and it's always changing. And, even when I think of myself as a buyer, my decision can change daily depending on how I'm feeling, or, situations that are happening in my life, or whatever it is. And it goes the same for our customers as well. And also too, their buying decision, when you think of CopperTree, for example, we want the reoccurring revenue. So we want our customers to continue to renew our SaaS subscriptions. So that buyer process or the customer journey doesn't stop once the product has been purchased. It's ongoing. So we have to really kind of focus on that life cycle and, optimize that customer journey. And that's where my passion lies.
And I think that's really important, even especially in today's times when customer journeys are evolving quite rapidly, behaviors are evolving rapidly, especially during the pandemic. We've seen that happen with multiple industries. So I know that one of the big challenges with SaaS-based companies and that relates to recurring revenue is customer retention. Mm-hmm. So the lifetime value of a customer is extremely important, and making sure that they're served and serviced well is extremely critical for any company's success.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
I'd be interested to know, what kind of marketing works well for CopperTree Analytics?
I think the biggest thing is engagement and that consistent engagement. So, for example, when, once a project has been implemented, the customer can go into our software and see, for example, what we call the top 5 insights of how their building's performing. And so, like any software, if I even think of my iPhone, for example, there's so many things within that iPhone that it does that I probably have no idea that it does that. It can be the same way with a SaaS platform as well. And so we really focus on educating our users on different features of the product and saying, hey, did you know that this particular part of Kaizen can help you do this? Because it goes back to that kind of the buying decision. So why did the customer purchase the product to begin with? Did they purchase it because they have sustainability targets that now that they have to reach, and they're hoping that Kaizen can assist them with that? But did they also know that they could use Kaizen for preventative maintenance or an energy information system? And so it's really, kind of educating, but also too, it's that check-in. How are you finding the
Mm.
software? And there's times where they said, oh, you know what? I haven't actually looked in there in a while. I haven't used it. And, it's helping them to kind of revisit why they purchased it in the first place, but also to helping to educate them on, other ways that the software can help them.
So true. And you hit a key word there, engagement. And I think this is extremely important for companies to track and measure engagement if they are to be successful in marketing. So, how do you guys do that with your brand? I mean, how do you track engagement, and what are the metrics that you use to identify that there's an engaged customer versus a non-engaged one?
Yeah, great question. And you know what? The answer to that really depends, once again, where the customer is in the life cycle, but also to what
Mm.
platforms am I using. So, we use a variety of different platforms, different types of campaigns. So, whether it's email marketing, whether it's social media, webinars, email, like e-blast, targeted e-blast, we kind of go through a multitude of channels. And depending on what channel we're using will actually depend on the actual KPI that we're using or the metrics that we're using to track that. For example, if we are doing an email campaign that's actually what we would call cold, they may have not even heard of CopperTree before, have had little to no engagement. I expect that my open rate and my click-through rate on something like that is going to be relatively low. I mean, yes, of course, I want it, to be as high as possible, but I go in with it's about that managing the expectation, but also to, if we could do A/B testing and things like that on an email campaign, but also to kind of take it back and say, okay, where do we see, where am I seeing click-through rates? Where am I seeing engagement? What particular topics are people seem to be more engaged with? An example for us, when COVID hit, our Kaizen software can help with indoor air quality. So that was a huge thing
Mm.
at the time, and and to this day it still is indoor air quality. So also too, it's about developing content and educating clients on things that are happening now and things that are relevant to them. Because I can send out a particular email campaign that I think might be valuable, but if it's not valuable to that particular market segment, or it's not going to go anywhere, no matter how well written or visually appealing it is. So that's one shift that we've really been making over the last year or so, is to really focus on the needs of the client and more of the education piece, rather than quote unquote hard sell.
Hmm. So that's interesting. I mean, it seems that, I always say education is the best form of marketing because you establish rapport with your customer, with your audience, and they are more inclined to doing business with you as a result. So you mentioned about a very important use case, and that is, obviously with COVID, the indoor air quality is extremely important. So tell us a little bit about that, because it seems that the solution you're offering would be a great a platform to be able to facilitate buildings, and help them kind of keep their indoor air quality much better. And how has COVID impacted this channel of the business?
Yeah. So, for example, we had developed what's called a health compliance package, and indoor air quality was included in that. And that was a campaign that we pushed at the beginning of COVID, to really, so we have certain algorithms that are built into the software that can help with, like, for example, indoor air quality. And so we did a campaign or a push for that. And I think at the time, you know, it, I think probably the world was still in a little bit of denial that COVID was as much of a problem as it turned out to be. And we wanted to jump on it and get ahead of it and educate, all vertical markets or all market segments on, the ability to use this health compliance algorithms to be able to optimize, like I said, whether it's indoor air quality, but also too within the health compliance package, because buildings aren't or weren't occupied at the time. You have a space now that is being it's probably running, assuming it's at full capacity, whether it's, a commercial real estate office building, or, you're a school. Well, those spaces were all of a sudden unoccupied, and then, I'm not sure exactly, how every company would have gone in and mitigated that. But, I'm sure that the HVAC systems weren't running as they should for an unoccupied space. So it was, that piece of it, it just goes back to what you just said. It's all about the education of it, and, and not pushing a hard sell saying, hey, this is going to save you money, because really at the end of the day, it wasn't about money. It was about occupant health and safety is what it was. And so that was our message.
Wow. So what are some of the biggest challenges when growing the brand? What are some of the biggest challenges that you faced when growing the CopperTree Analytics brand?
Yeah, interesting question. So building analytics itself is actually relatively in its infancy. Now, our software has been around since 2011. However, it's only within the last couple of years that we've really started to see the uptake of, AI and machine learning and those kind of quote unquote buzzwords. And, really, like I said, what it comes down to is understanding the buyer behavior and why different users are either interested or purchasing this type of software. Where we've kind of evolved is that when CopperTree was created, we were created as a response for, energy management. And so one of the things that we would focus on is, okay, we're going to save you money. And what we had been learning is that not everybody wants to save money. It sounds silly, but that's not necessarily the end goal for our users. It could be something like preventative maintenance. That's one that's huge, because yes, there's a cost savings in that, but it's also resources as well. So if it can help them optimize their resources, that's another piece of it. One of the other things that, we've been focusing on when it comes to growing our brand is, when we talk about demographics, or even, I've been talking about market segments here. And, if you've taken any marketing courses, they break it up by, your age, your gender, and they kind of create this profile of you, and they put you in this kind of profile and perhaps assume that that's how they're going to market to you. And so what I've been finding is that, me as a customer, I don't put myself in any type of box. I just go and I buy a product because, whatever's in my black box that makes me want to buy it. And so what we've really been having to shift is focus around, challenges that users or prospects may be facing, and focus on the challenge that they're facing and how we can educate them on, the challenge itself. Because, a lot of times people don't actually know that they have a problem or that it's an issue. And so, educating them on, hey, did you know that this could actually make your life easier? Or this could help you meet your sustainability goals, or this can help reduce carbon emissions, or, so it's really going beyond, just save energy, or just reduce energy consumption, or, look at the faults in a building. We really need to go beyond that and focus on, the actual education piece of building analytics itself and what building analytics can do for, the building community.
It's tough when your customers don't even know that there is a problem. It can be quite challenging. And I think that, buyer personas or customer avatars, these are kind of overused in the marketing world. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they tend to, really over segment the audience or overgeneralize the audience at times if it's not as specific. And it's tough to have the demographics set completely when you're focusing mainly on the challenges. And in your industry, I can understand that you're trying to create awareness of these problem areas, and then educate your audience about, okay, how you can tackle this problem. That's the challenge. And then ultimately convince them that your solution has a solution to that problem that they never even knew that they had.
Exactly.
Wow. So what does what where do you see are some of the biggest opportunities in the near future?
Well, I think to piggyback on what I was just mentioning is that it's that education piece,
Hmm.
and that's what it excites me. We have projects all across the globe, but however, our primary projects are here in North America. And so, the building community is definitely seeing, kind of an uptake of more of data and what they're, seeing from data and trends and being able to kind of optimize that data and take action on it. And so North America is our primary current market, but there's so many other opportunity to expand and go globally. And, that's the most exciting piece of it, is just really to take what CopperTree is doing now. And, my big, hairy, audacious goal, or, what we say in goal setting is, to have CopperTree Analytics on every building. Yes, of course, that's something that would, there's technical stuff in the background that, it's not plausible right now for every building. But, if you think of it, like when you have a control system that's controlling the heating in your home, it's just something that's there. You turn up the heat, you turn down the heat. Why not have, building analytics in all buildings to help optimize that?
So true. Obviously, there's a lot of development in this technology that is happening. And as automation systems are being put in place in especially newer construction projects and newer buildings, I can see that this is basically a path for CopperTree Analytics' success, essentially, where you can actually apply those analytics and provide a service that can shed light on what is working and how HVACs can get optimized, for example.
Exactly. It's not as it's not just for older buildings or buildings that are already standing. Our product has the ability to help with new construction as well. And so when a builder is ready to hand it over to the owner, they can hand it over with being 100% sure that those HVAC systems and that are up subpar and just as optimized as possible. Helping with that finished product.
Hmm. So, from a marketing perspective, I do want to touch base a little bit about how marketing has shifted during COVID, because obviously before COVID, there were a lot of things that companies normally did offline when it came to marketing. But did you see any shifts happening with your brand, and if so, were they positive?
Absolutely. One of the biggest sources of new leads for us were conferences and trade shows. We would go to probably at least 12 trade shows a year, some in Germany, some in Australia, all over North America. So there's kind of two pieces of it. There's the cost component of it, of traveling and cost of being at trade shows, booth costs, everything like that. But that was generally where we saw a lot of leads, and we had a ton of organic growth
Hmm.
through outlets like that and through channels like that. And so when I was brought on and COVID was started to kind of kick in, we didn't have the ability to attend those trade shows anymore and to have that kind of face-to-face time to be able to demo our product right on the spot, and and be able to track the leads or the people that were coming through our booth. And so when you're selling a software as a service, you really have to be able to showcase your value. It's one thing to market through wording. It's another to be able to actually demo or showcase the product. And so we were trying to get the same capacity of leads that we had through trade shows and trade show follow-ups and the sponsorships that we were doing at trade shows to kind of have that visibility. We had to get creative, and we did attend actually quite a few virtual trade shows, and some were actually done quite well. And to have the speaking opportunities and things like that, it didn't, but it wasn't making up for what in-person trade shows were giving for us. And so it really went back to the education piece. And so, there's quite a bit of a conversation I'm seeing right now out in the marketplace around, lead generation versus demand generation. And so, what does your sales funnel look like between the two? And, when we focus on, selling or cold leads or cold calling and just kind of I don't want to say old school, but a little bit more of the old school way of outreach when it comes to sales. You end up with this really heavy top funnel, but, maybe not as much at the bottom. And so I've been shifting more towards, demand generation and going towards actually how am I educating the right people on the right things and really trying to be strategic about it. And you know what, it does take some work. We've actually been hosting focus groups, for example, and pulling together different people from different organizations to talk about pain points, but to also talk about just the overall experience. And when I say experience, I mean experience in terms of their kind of day to day. And these people aren't actually users of ours. They are, yes, who we would want to target, but it's more so from us. Okay, let's get a perspective of the day to day that, whether it's a facility manager or director of operations or building owner, let's take the time to actually get a sense of what their day to day is. And, really one of the biggest challenges that we're hearing is actually just resources. This sounds like building analytics sounds great. I don't have anybody to run it, So it's interesting to see a roadblock like that in the kind of customer journey when you're at that kind of awareness stage of it, to see a roadblock like that, to say, okay, they love the product and they seem to be bought in. However, they don't have anybody that's going to, be able to take the time to learn the system and to be able to go in and action on this. They're just, with resources. So, how do you mitigate and how do you handle that? We do have a managed services component of our software where we basically do that for our customers and put forth recommendations on, how the building could be optimized. However, if they don't have anybody to implement those measures, once again, there's that little bit of a roadblock. So I've definitely found that approach to market research to really provide quite a bit of education for us in how we approach marketing and sales and the customer journey overall.
And again, that's what customer journey mapping is all about. It's about identifying those roadblocks and tackling those so that you can actually close better deals and more deals as a result of that. So I mean, that's really interesting. If I were to ask you, like in terms of the different kinds of marketing you've done, you've spoken about education, you've spoken about doing some virtual events and so forth. And obviously there's different kinds of marketing that you've actually tried to do when establishing the brand. Are there any tactics that have kind of stood out over others?
Yeah, and what's been interesting. So when you think about kind of conventional marketing from even from a digital side, and you think about optimizing SEO, paid ads, things like that. What's interesting in our particular industry is that, if someone was to go in and to search building analytics, for example, and if I were to look at my Google ads and see, what's the pay per click, like what's the cost at and things like that, it's still relatively low. And so what that tells me is that, yes, I can use it to make sure that I have strong SEO and things like that. However, what it's telling me is that, the industry is still in its infancy, and the Google words and things like that, or the keyword searches, it's relatively straightforward for us to stay on top of, compared to, kind of the more mature industries. So for the time being, whether it's SEO or SEM, we have a good handle on that for, like I said, our product and our industry right now. But also too, I'm finding that, even when we look at social media, for example, and, the followers and different engagement strategies and, where people resonating with, our posts, or, where are people resonating on our website. And, we just want to be able to educate. So we want people to go to the website. We want them to request a demo of our software. We want to be able to show them how we can help them. And what I'm seeing is that, our social media engagement and where we see, when I'm looking at KPIs and things like that, and just, analytics on social media, I'm seeing, the most engagement once again around education. We deal with, quite a few engineers, and engineers, they want to see those case studies. They want to see those white papers. They want to see how the particular software was able to perform and what the results were. So for us, once again, it goes back to that kind of that education piece.
Got it. Now, I don't want this to be a technical conversation, but I do want to kind of know if there's a marketing automation platform that you use to measure these metrics.
Yes. So so I use Google for a few different things, but I primarily use HubSpot. I use HubSpot to basically track and analyze everything. It does the social media for us. It's our CRM. It does all of our e-campaigns. I can set up various different marketing automation. So, e-blast, follow-up e-blast, things like that. And, various different analytics can be pulled and reporting can be pulled to be able to track how things are performing. Very, very
the agency tool. The agency that I'm part of, 2Web, is a partner of HubSpot. And this morning we were actually at a HubSpot event.
Oh, okay.
That was basically, they were revealing some of the new technologies that they have in the pipeline. And it's actually quite interesting on how they're growing quite rapidly and how they're able to service companies, such as yourself when it comes to marketing, and to be able to track these analytics. Because I always say, data is extremely important for you to make those strategic decisions. And they're really good in collecting data points from all these different channels and bringing them together for marketers like yourself, and ultimately helping you make better decisions when it comes to the right kind of content, the right kind of engagement, and all those pieces.
Absolutely. So, it is a very, very powerful tool.
Excellent. So on more of a personal note, Carlee, if you were to go back 10 years, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Oh, definitely take more risk. And, I mean that from a personal standpoint, but also from a career standpoint as well. I spent almost 10 years with a large utility here in BC, and I had great experience working for them. However, we used to call it the golden handcuffs. It was such a great company to work for, all the right benefits and, job security and that. I just kind of wish I'd ventured into the real world a little bit sooner. The way things, especially on the marketing side, how quickly things evolve. There wasn't a lot of autonomy there. So to kind of go into the quote unquote real world and, to just have things, faster paced and, to have a little bit more control was something that I wish I'd done at a younger age. But also to just, it's great, especially with our generation, to work for different companies and experience different cultures, learn from different people, build a network of support. I definitely have been able to do that. I just wish I'd started it sooner.
That's true. So based on your experience and the challenges that you've overcome, if there was one big takeaway that you could give to our listeners and other marketing professionals, what would that be?
Always keep learning. It's never, even whether it's, something as, listening to this podcast or attending a webinar or deciding to go back and pursue further education, education is something that can never be taken away from you. So, I say always be learning, especially on the marketing side. Everything evolves and changes so quickly. When I studied at BCIT, a million years ago, there was no social media. There's no social media included in my diploma. I think we maybe touched on Facebook, but at that point there was no paid ads or anything like that. So, it's in what we do in our roles here, it is critical to always be learning and just educating yourself. And the challenge with that, though, I'll say, is that there is, so much content out there and conflicting views on, when I was touching on lead generation versus demand generation, there's quite a bit of a debate on, what's good and what's not, and what may work for your organization may not work for another organization. So it's really a trial and error.
So true. And, I always say life is about progress, and nothing facilitates progress more than education. So it's really important to continuously learn and continuously build your skill set. And I see that you're currently pursuing your MBA right as well. That is one thing on my bucket list as well. So we can have a different conversation about that as well once the time comes. But it's been such a pleasure to have you on the show today, Carlee. Where can people find out more about yourself and contact you online?
I think the best way is probably through LinkedIn. I am on LinkedIn quite a bit, and then at least that way with the messaging platform, I can kind of go in and check it and respond, when I'm not handling school or kids or, my full-time job. And we can connect that way. Like I said, building a network is also really important to me. I love meeting new people. I love mentoring, and I love, having a mentor myself. So, I'm always happy to connect with new people.
That's great. I'll definitely include a link to your profile, as well as have our team link to the CopperTree Analytics website so they can learn more about the company and your background. Again, it's been such a pleasure to have you here today. Thank you so much for coming to the show. And
thank you. I appreciate your time.
Excellent. And we wish you the best.